Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Sunday Night SitDown. I am your host, Miracle Jones, and we're very excited for you to join us this evening. This week it was just announced that we have legislative maps, so we are good to go for the May 17th election. And so, with the Sunday Night Sit Down, we'll be talking with people who are running for office to get to know them a little more about why they're running, what their political philosophies are, their hopes and their joys during this campaign season. And tonight, we're very excited and honored to have PA 12 Congressional Candidate Steve Irwin to join us this evening. Steve is running for the congressional seat vacated by right now Congressman Mike Doyle, and he's here to talk about his campaign, why he got into the race. And so, welcome to the Sunday Night Sit Down, Steve Irwin. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Miracle. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for doing this. It's a real service.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know you're in the midst of a heavy campaign season. You just got your signatures in. So, what drew you to run for this office and get involved in the race?
Wow. Well, we are at an incredibly critical time in the history of our country, in the history of Pittsburgh and southwestern Pennsylvania and our planet. And when Mike Doyle announced that he was going to retire from Congress after 27 years, I knew that the issues that we face now in healthcare and infrastructure and jobs and the economy and geopolitically really called out to me. There were areas where I've spent my career, both as a lawyer and in business and in politics and public service, focused on. And it just called to me and said, I need to step up. I mean, at this point where, I guess I could finish out my career and call it quits, but I think we have to give something back, and I think ready to serve.
Thank you so much. You talk about ready to serve. What are some of the unique qualities that you bring to this race?
Well, probably the only candidate who plays the accordion, but that's not really the only reason to vote for me. No, I also happen to have a lot of experience, over many years in very many sectors in the nonprofit community, where I've led organizations in our community like Big Brothers Big Sisters and Sustainable Pittsburgh, Rainbow Kitchen, and done a lot with the food bank and other community-based organizations. And also in business, I've owned and involved with restaurants and the hospitality industry and other businesses. And I'm a lawyer and have had a long career doing everything from fighting political corruption to fighting the drug companies, pharmaceutical companies fraud, to representing people who've been discriminated against in employment, and also in public service. I've had tremendous public service, starting with 5 years in the United States Senate and Congress in Washington, and then coming here to Pittsburgh, where I've served in Mayor Murphy's administration as heading up the parking authority, which actually is an unbelievably interesting job. And then everything from serving with Governor Rendell as his banking and securities head, and where I worked on protecting and looking out for underserved populations in banking and finance and underrepresented people in those industries. And now I'm the chair of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission for Pennsylvania. So I've had a lot of government experience, and want to put that to work for everyone in southwestern Pennsylvania in this 12th congressional district.
And you talked about a lot of your political experience, but is there a political figure that you draw inspiration from?
I draw inspiration from many. That's a great question. When I was young, the first president I remember was JFK, John F. Kennedy. And he said, ask not what you can do for your country. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And to me, that's something that question I've always asked myself, and look for opportunities to get involved where we can make a difference. Because I believe that government can be a catalyst for positive change. I believe that the institutions of our government are there, and with the right people working hard, working together, we can bring people together to get things done for everybody. So JFK also was a first president who introduced really important legislation that, unfortunately, because of his untimely assassination, he wasn't able to finish. But he was the first to conceive of things like the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, which provides for prohibiting discrimination in employment and other because of your race or the color of your skin or your nationality or your gender. And he wrote the legislation that prohibited discrimination in housing. Those are all things, unfortunately, we're all still working on today, but he set the table for us. And then, of course, space, he said we were going to get to the moon and in 10 years, and he did it. And that's even though it's cost a fair amount of money, we've all benefited greatly by the science that came from and the technology that emerged through the space program, much of which happened and started right here in Western Pennsylvania.
Thank you for that. And you're talking a lot about like your experiences, the people you've looked up to, and you mentioned you being the chair of the Civil Rights Commission. What are some of the things that you believe will take you to use your experiences to benefit and represent the people of the 12th District to Congress?
So let's start with the work that I did under Governor Rendell. For 8 years, I was head of banking and securities. And that allowed me to get involved on a national level in financial services industry and the economy, and understand all the things you've heard out, the SEC, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, all the different engines of government help drive and control things like inflation and jobs in the economy. And in that role, I actually became the head of federal legislation. I drafted and devised the federal legislative agenda for all 50 states in Congress on financial services. I presented it, I formulated it, and I testified before Congress on it. And we were able to get bills introduced and laws passed that relate to those important issues. So knowing how to do that, on top of my work in the U.S. Senate, where I worked on the Appropriations Committee with the senator from Pennsylvania I worked for, and working on the floor of the Senate, I know how to get things done there. So I think that is really important. Another position that I held was commissioner representing the city of Pittsburgh on the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission, which is responsible for our 10-county region in southwestern Pennsylvania for building infrastructure. And infrastructure is a really important part of a job of a congressperson, because 80% of the money that goes to pay for our infrastructure comes from Washington, D.C. And it's not automatic. Some of it's formula-based, but some of it's discretionary. So you've got to be able to fight for those dollars. And, just authorizing them and having the bill passed and having the money there in a pot in Washington is not everything. You've got to be in there and, fighting through and making your case why that money needs to come here. Certainly Fern Hollow falling into the ravine was a great case for President Biden to send some money here, but we've got another 150 bridges just like that. So my knowledge of infrastructure and the infrastructure projects I've worked on in this region for many, many years as a lawyer and in my work, as I just described, really, I think prepares me well to represent our Pennsylvania and southwestern Pennsylvania in this district in Congress.
And we're talking about the district, and you've had this experience. What are some of the leading issues, areas of concerns for the people of the 12th district, and what can Congress do to address them?
Great question, Miracle. So there are so many issues, right? And one of the things is that as a congressperson, we need somebody who is really a jack of all trades, right? Someone who has really some in-depth knowledge on not just one issue, but many things. You need somebody who's a utility fielder who can play all the bases, not someone who can just throw the football, but someone who can catch it, someone who can block, someone who can tackle, and run with the ball. And so that's my experience in so many different areas, in healthcare, in infrastructure, in civil rights, in voting rights, I can go on. Those are things that we're going to be faced with, and you need to be able to have versatility and to be able to address. So let me tell you. So healthcare, we have great disparities in healthcare. In my work as the co-chair of the Pittsburgh Regional Health Initiative, we were able to uncover and address many of the disparities in healthcare, and particularly in perinatal health, and how Black women have different outcomes than other folks. And we have ways to do that. That's an example of something where there are medical errors where they don't need to occur. And I've been asked to speak with the Pittsburgh Business Group on health precisely on this issue in the next couple of weeks. I've been working to lay the groundwork for a national patient and provider safety authority that will make sure that patient safety and the people that are on the front lines, our doctors, our nurses, the people working in our hospitals, are really protected from unnecessary and avoidable error. That actually is the third. Some people think it's the third largest cause of death in this country. I'm going to be the champion to have that National Patient Safety Board become law in our country. So that's healthcare is a big one. It's a really big one. I mean, the healthcare system's broken. My daughter's a physician. I've been a patient. I know the system inside and out. I've been counsel to the Healthcare Council of Western Pennsylvania for the last 25 years. Again, as I described earlier, I fought the pharmaceutical companies for fraud in presenting drugs that they claimed were better than the generic drug and charged more for them, but they were really the same thing. Able to get a $150 million verdict that helped return money to consumers because of that. So those are the kinds of things that I'm going to focus on.
Thank you for that. I mean, you've talked, a lot about like advocating and fighting for people, as a lawyer. And, recently it was announced that you did get the endorsement of Congressman Mike Doyle, whose seat you're now advocating for. So can you just talk about what that means to you and to your campaign?
Yeah, I'm really honored by that endorsement. I haven't held elective office before. I have a TV show just like you. It's called Political Jungle. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Miracle. You ever see Political Jungle?
I've seen it a couple times
Okay.
because
Like
we research our people. Yes, we do research our
yes,
candidates.
it's a show, and I had over a number of years we've had many politicians on because I really believe the character matters in this business. You asked me about Mike Doyle's endorsement. It's very important to me because Mike Doyle served our region incredibly well over the last 25 years. And we have a long way to go. And this rising tide has not lifted all boats yet. And we need to always have equity and access at the forefront of everything that we do. We have to make sure that everyone's at the table when we're figuring out what we're going to focus on and when we're figuring out the solutions. But I've known Mike, I've worked with Mike and his team here in Pittsburgh and in Washington on legislative issues and on things for constituents. And I know that his shoes are big shoes to fill. So when he has looked and gotten to know all the candidates in this race and made a decision to say that he thinks I'm the best person to succeed him and to continue the work that he's begun, I'm very honored to have that endorsement.
Thank you so much. And we're talking about, this campaign season. It's always very contentious with campaigns, but Pennsylvania has been at the heart of a lot of conversations around election integrity with Act 77. We still have a lot of people still debating the election results. So how are you going to use your position to engage people around transforming, the election system so people feel a part of the system, people feel they can trust their elections? Again, some of it is misinformation, disinformation, but now there's legitimate concern about elections. So how do you see your campaign?
Yeah. So first of all, everybody who's registered to vote should be able to vote. It shouldn't matter whether they can get to the polls on the day of the election. We're going to have to fight and continue to fight to get it so that there's no voter suppression. That's very important. It's one of the charges of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission's Pennsylvania Advisory Committee is to investigate when we find instances where there are voter suppression. Voting rights are key to the Civil Rights Act. It's part of our responsibility. So one of the things I'm going to do is call it out when I see it. I don't think there was voter fraud in that last election. President Biden is our president. There's no question about it. We have to make sure that the judges of election who are elected and watching over precincts are not abusing their power and that they don't try to prevent anybody from voting who wishes to vote and is registered to vote. So those are things that I'm going to do. But also what we have to do is we have to register people. And we have to because when we register people, we get more Democrats registered usually. And when Democrats vote, Democrats win. And we do that, then we can get more things done. And that's just basic. We have to work hard to get people registered, but the way we get them registered is when they see results. And it's a matter of getting things done. That's what I'm running about. I'm running about progress, tangible results for this district. I want to be able to, sometimes you don't want to compromise your principles, but you've got to compromise to move the ball forward a little bit. And then you come back and you keep on working. And so and when people see that their vote matters because the people they put in office are getting things done, then they'll start to believe in the process, and it'll work a whole lot better.
And you talk about getting things done and compromise. A lot of times people want really speedy results, with elections. They want a lot of bills and bills passed quickly. How do you think you'll go about managing expectations for bills for people in your district and getting, these tangible results?
Yeah, it's a process, and they're impatient and they want things done yesterday. I think one of the things is, look, we don't disagree about everything, and we agree about a lot. There's things that are highlighted that we don't get done, and there's a lot that President Biden's gotten done already. And those things were done. They were bipartisan, or at least bipartisan enough. We don't need all the Republicans. We just need a couple of them to get some of these things done. And so we've got to focus on the things we can do, build trust, build relationships among members so they're accountable to each other. And there's some horse trading that has to happen. And we've got to scratch some backs that we'd rather not scratch. But I think when you do that, eventually, you'll be able to move the ball forward. We have an opportunity now with what's happening in Ukraine, because so many people in this country are supporting President Biden and Secretary Blinken and the decisions they're making. People are stepping up in so many different ways. I'm involved in trying to bring orphan kids, make sure they're safe in Poland or out of Ukraine. And if they have to come to this country, be ready for them to come to this country. Those are kinds of things we can all get behind. We're all united against the tyranny of a despot like Vladimir Putin. And so we have to recognize those things that bring us together. My hope is I can bring people together. It's what I've done my whole career. It's what I'm going to do in Congress. And I'm very excited about having that platform where I can really help to bring people together.
We're talking about bringing people together, and over the past few months, there's been a lot of dialogue about racial inequities in our region. You mentioned, the disparities in health. What are some of the ways that you want to work to address some of the racial inequities that face, people of the 12th district as their congressperson?
Yeah, there's just so many things, Miracle. And let me just tell you a couple of things. Let's touch on housing. Let's touch about schools. We did a groundbreaking investigation study. We held hearings at the U.S. Civil Rights Commission's Pennsylvania Committee on exclusionary discipline. That's people being suspended or expelled from school. And we found that there was a greatly disproportionate meting out of that discipline to kids who are of color or disabled or LGBTQ youth. Now, what happens is when they're expelled or they're suspended, they get behind in their studies. When they get behind in their studies, they get frustrated, they give up, they drop out of school. They drop out of school, they get bored, they get into either, unfortunately, drugs or other behaviors that send them ultimately to prison. And they're taken out of our system. And then we expect them 5 or 10 years later to suddenly show up after they've lost these critical years of their development in their lives to be fruitful members of society and to take care of themselves and their families. That's the school to prison pipeline. That's what happens. We've identified those problems. We've uncovered them. We've shown them statistically. We've gotten great advice on how to change the nature of discipline in schools. And we're going to do everything we can to try to make the schools a place where kids are communities that work within to restore relationships and not remove kids from those settings as much as possible. So that's one area. A second area is, in healthcare, which I talked about before, and through the National Patient Provider Safety Authority, and also through infrastructure and access. You can't get to your job, you can't get to your school, you can't get to your doctor unless you have a way to get there that's affordable and easy. You can't expect a disabled person to drop them off 3 blocks from a doctor's office and expect them to be able to walk there. And so we have to make sure in Congress that we are providing the funding to have a really vibrant transit network and give people the access they need so they have access to these things, to healthcare and to mental health supports and their jobs.
A lot of the work you've also done in Pennsylvania is to combat anti-Semitism in, this region, but also nationally. What are some of the ways that you want to continue this work in Congress?
Yeah, so I've been very involved both as through the Anti-Defamation League and increasing education. I think hate is the enemy of democracy, and understanding really builds those relationships. Yeah, if you don't mind, just for 1 second, I just want to go back to one thing I meant to talk about a second ago in Miracle, and that was housing discrimination. Because your viewers are going to be looking at this, I want you to know that the Pennsylvania Advisory Committee to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, what we're looking at now is housing discrimination, and housing discrimination is a real problem in Pittsburgh. We have people who go to live in apartments and they're rejected for no reason, but when you take a look at it, it's really because of the color of their skin. We really need to end that kind of illegal and enforce the laws that we have on the books. What we're going to have to do is make sure that the Justice Department has the funding it needs, make sure our U.S. Attorney has the resources it needs to investigate and uncover the kind of illegal discrimination. We know from anecdotal evidence, but we need to know better, that there's discriminatory treatment against people often just because of the color of their skin. We need to be able to record this. We need to call it out. We need to investigate it, show that it's prevalent. We've got to stop it.
And are you looking for people to reach out to share their stories with the commission? Should people be okay? And we'll put that link in the chat up to the Pennsylvania Commission so people can share their stories. But one of the questions that we're asking is, as a congressperson, how would you continue on your work of combating anti-Semitism?
Yeah, we're going to have 3 series of hearings on the housing issues, and they're published. And I'll make sure you have that so you can share that with your viewers. And there's an opportunity for public comment, and people should come and share their experience of discrimination in housing. That's really important. And that includes not only rentals, but Airbnbs and anything like that. Trying to buy a home in a neighborhood, anything like that. We want to know all about that. And again, what I can do in Congress is making sure that our civil rights laws are as strong as they can be. The recommendations that go to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission then go to Congress, and Congress enacts laws based on the investigations that they've done. And so what I can do is I can make sure I'm in a hearing, I'm on a committee, or I'll show up at hearings and ask those questions of the people who are responsible for that enforcement, to make sure they know about the problems out there in the field that I hear about from all of you out there who are watching this, who are telling me about this, so I can share it. I can make speeches on the floor of the House of Representatives and put it in the congressional record, and let people know it's there. Let people know that it may be 2020, but some days it feels like 1950.
Thank you so much, for sharing your experiences and the motivation of why you do the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for encouraging people to get involved and share their stories with the commission. And as we wrap up, we know, like I said, there's a lot going on with campaigns day in and day out. But is there anything that's bringing you joy right now? Has there been an unexpected surprise about campaigning? You did say this, like, here's your first campaign. Something that's keeping you going at this moment.
Yeah, so it's my first campaign, but it's not my first campaign. I've run campaigns forever. I've run attorney general's campaigns, chaired judicial campaigns. I've campaigned for countless people. And so I've done everything you can do in a campaign other than be the candidate. I can tell you, being the candidate is the hardest thing of all. And what I've been amazed at is the numbers of people that are required to pull off a campaign of this size. We have 750,000 people in this congressional district. For me to reach them, I've got literally hundreds of people working on this campaign, and to recruit them and to go back and ask all your friends and people you don't know, to have them believe in you, to spend every day really helping you achieve this goal. And it's not a goal about me checking a box that I've been in Congress, but to affect the change that we want to see in the world. That's really important. And so, I have found that that's really the most surprising thing. I mean, working from 6 or 7 in the morning until midnight or more, that's happening every day. There's no day off. This beard, I actually grew this beard. I thought in your promo for this, I don't have a beard, and I didn't have a beard until about 6 weeks ago. My dad sadly passed away. He's 90 years old, married 65 years to my mom, and in our tradition, we don't shave for a month after your parent died. So I didn't shave for a month, and then I said, "This is great. I can save all this time. I don't have to shave." So I'm not shaving, and that's where we are. But the long hours, So it's not like a hockey beard until, through the playoffs. But it kind of feels that way. But I think it's just really, you have to reach out to so many people and ask so much from so many people in order to pull this off. And I know all the campaigns are doing this. We're all working real hard. We all want to get to the same place. We have different ways and different priorities and ways to get there. But I want to represent everyone in this district. When I think about the problems that we have, there are many we share, some we don't, but I want to address all of them. And when I'm figuring out what the solutions are to those problems, I want to make sure everybody's at the table. And I pledge to do that.
Thank you so much. And how can people learn more about your campaign? Go learn more about you. Where's your website and your social media handles?
So first of all, we have a headquarters in East Liberty on Highland Avenue, 200 block of North Highland. And everyone's welcome. Please come, stop by. It's a great neighborhood. East Liberty is no longer, when I first, came here back in the early 80s, the Liberty in many ways was a bridge from Shady Side to Highland Park, and it was really a mess. And it's really fantastic what's happened. We still have a long way to go, but I wanted to be right here because this is an extremely important neighborhood. We have so much history. Kelly Strayhorn Theater is right around the corner. There's some great coffee shops here. There's some empty storefronts. Come and see, put in a business here. So come here. Also check us out on our website, which is steveforpa.com. So you can take a look at that. And we have Steve Irwin PA is all our social media. Irwin PA. So you can find us on Instagram and Twitter and anything else. I think we're out on LinkedIn too. But I hope you'll follow us and learn more about our plans for making vocational education and college affordable for everybody. Our plans to help eliminate disparities in sentencing, for reimagining police, for fixing those little roads that no one cares about so that they don't fall in, for just giving people all the tools they need to provide for themselves and their families so they and their loved ones can have rewarding and satisfying lives. Dignity. It's all about dignity and humanity. We have to be leaders. When you hold a position like Congress, you've got to be a person in the entire community, making sure everyone knows what everyone's facing and caring about each other. It takes a village. And we have a beautiful community here. I know we can make this happen. I really would love to be our champion in Washington to marshal those resources to help make that happen.
Thank you so much, Steve Irwin, candidate for Congress representing the 12th District. We want to thank you so much for joining us this evening, and good luck to you and the rest of your campaign.
Thank you, Miracle. Really appreciate you having me on. Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you. And thank you so much. And this has been the Sunday Night Sit Down. Again, it's the moment where we get to meet candidates and talk one-on-one. You get to learn who they are, why they're running, what brings them joy. And like we said, this is campaign season. So we'll have more candidates for you to talk to. But tomorrow, you're going to have another forum for our District 17. Candidates will be joining us tomorrow at 7 o'clock to answer your questions about why they're running, have a moderated debate, if you will. So please make sure you tune in tomorrow at 7 p.m. If you have any questions, please remember to reach out to us. Like and subscribe to our YouTube page. We have a lot of great content coming up. But as a reminder, for those of you in the 19th and 24th legislative districts, not congressional districts, but legislative districts, you have a vote coming up on April 5th. So please make sure you are registered to vote. You are going to be voting for the people who are going to be replacing Mayor Ed Gainey and former Representative Jake Wheatley, who is now working as the chief of staff in the mayor's office. So again, you have two elections, one on April 5th and one on May 17th for those of you in the 19th and 24th legislative districts. And if you join us a little late, remember the legislative maps are now out. So we have a full election happening on May 17th. So you want to make sure you're registered to vote. You want to make sure you go back and you look at your Secretary of State's website to see if your polling place has changed. For some of you, you're in a new legislative district, and so you want to make sure your ward or your precinct has not changed. So go and double check your voter registration. with that, I hope you have a great evening and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much for tuning into this edition of the Sunday Sit Down. I am your host, Miracle Jones, signing off. Have a good night.